Hello guys, and welcome to my new Holy Paladin video. First healing video I've ever made. And without further ado, today I will be talking about the Holy Paladin in 7.3.5. My name is Squiggle, and in the last couple of months of this expansion, I've been delving a little bit into healing in Mythic Rating and Mythic Plus, and I wanted to share with you guys how that has been going in the last couple of months. Now, I've been healing a few keys that have been around the 20 to 22 mark. My Paladin is only about 960 in my Mythic Plus and rating set, and people, despite knowing that I'm about 10-15 eye levels under the other healers, still choose me a lot of the time, I've got some friends who will choose me over a lot of other healers they know, they main healer. And I think it's based off my knowledge of the class that I've gained over the last couple of months, despite not being a healer in the past. Now, it is no lie, the Holy Paladin is a great class. It is a great spec, and it's probably the best in all of Mythic Plus. Now, the reason for this is simply due to its burst healing, its survivability, and many other great factors. So, without further ado, I'm going to be getting onto my video. Today, I will be having a short look at what all of our talents do, what our healing priority is in Mythic Plus and in raids, and I'm going to be telling you guys the differences between Mythic Plus and raiding on a Holy Paladin, which spells you are going to be using more, and what our role really is in both of these. Now to start it off, we have Bestow Faith, Light's Hammer, and Crusader's Might. Now, all of these, honestly, really do have their place in certain scenarios, whereas what I'm going to recommend for raiding is that you run Bestow Faith for about 80% of fights, and for Mythic Plus, you run Crusader's Might all of the time. Now, the reasoning behind this is because when you are doing raiding, you are essentially a glorified spot healer for about 90% of the fight. Bestow Faith ends up being something that we use on the main tank on cooldown, the one who is tanking the boss at the time, or on a DPS or healer who has a lot of stacks for a debuff. For example, if you see someone has 2 stacks on Mythic Argus, you have to make sure that you are putting Bestow Faith on them, especially if they have the Soul Blight debuff, to make sure they survive. It's essentially your job in raiding to make sure that people are getting burst heals. Now, as for Mythic Plus, the reason we use Crusader's Might is simply because it does so much damage. Now, you can do a fight, you can do some burst windows for about 2 mil if you use the old war potion. You can even go up to 3 or 4 mil if you're lucky, like you guys might have been seeing in the MDI. And basically, what this allows you to do is it allows you to smack the boss really hard, even weave in some holy shocks onto your team to make sure that they're not dying. Now, this means that you have a burst window every time you're on a boss, and it's insanely good for tyrannical keys as well. Now, as for Light's Hammer, in raiding, this is generally used on both Argus and Varimathras. Now, Argus, I prefer to use Bestow Faith still, because I prefer to make sure people don't die. I'm not the sort of person who likes to top everyone up. I feel like that's more of a disciplined priest or a restoration shaman's job. Now, for Varimathras though, there are hardly any scenarios where Bestow Faith is any good, so it's probably better to just go with Light's Hammer and use it on the raid on cooldown. For the second row, this is pretty simple. I really like using Rule of Law in both raiding and Mythic Plus, and it really allows you to do some great things. I feel like it is slightly better in raiding scenarios, but there are always going to be times in Mythic Plus when range have to be out pretty far and you want to be smacking the boss. So using Rule of Law allows us to put some big heals on them, even if they're at 40-yard range. The next row is basically just utility. Now you can use Repentance to do some pretty cool skips in Mythic Plus, but most of the time you just go Blinding Light just to make sure you're getting that extra interrupt in on those mobs. Next up we have our auras. Now for Mythic Plus you're going to be going with Devotion Aura, and for raiding you are going to be going Aura of Sacrifice. Now, the main reason for this is the passive benefit of Devo Aura is just simply better for those one-shot mechanics in Mythic Plus, especially because you're going to be in close proximity with these people. Now, on top of that, if there are these one-shot mechanics in the Mythic Plus, Devo Aura is very good for this. However, with Aura of Sacrifice, you get 8 seconds of just God mode healing, where it doesn't matter how much damage people take, they just instantly get topped up. Simply because there aren't so many AoE one-shot abilities in the game in the rating. Next up, we have Holy Avenger. Now, this is actually really good, and it goes along with your wings both in rating and Mythic Plus. It allows you to do some crazy damage, some crazy healing, and honestly I just set this as a macro to both my aura and to my wings and forget about it for most of the time. You can also macro this with your Velens if you do have it, but we'll get to that later. Next up, we have Sanctified Wrath and Judgment of Light. Now, Sanctified Wrath is going to be what we are using for our Mythic Plus build. Now, the main reason for this is because Judgment of Light is very good for trickle damage in raids, but loses a bit of value when you only have 5 people and you're pretty much topping up people instantly. Now, this is another thing that is going to go great with our burst window. It's going to allow us to do so much damage and so much healing. Now, as for the rating choice, Judgment of Light basically means that you can just top people up without even thinking about it. Now, this goes really good with the Legendary Ring. This means that you're going to be using Judgment on cooldown to keep that healing benefit up, and of course, letting that trickle damage go through to your group. If you've played this on Varimathras, you know that as soon as you cast Judgment, all of your stacks are just instantly healed up, and it ends up being so much of your healing. So this pretty much makes Judgment such a good spell for us in raiding, and yeah, it's pretty fun. Last but not least, we have our beacons. Now, generally in most scenarios, you're going to be going with Beacon of Virtue in Mythic Plus, simply because it allows you to heal 4 members simultaneously. Now, if you have these scenarios like Morose, where you have 3 or 4 Garrotes out in the group in a tyrannical setting, this will allow people to go from 0 to full pretty quickly with just a Beacon of Virtue and some Holy Shocks. Now, the best thing about this as well is it is an instant cast to go with your Holy Shock and your Light of Dawn. So with 3 instant cast abilities, you can pretty much top up most Mythic Plus groups, depending on the scenario. Now, as for Beacon of Faith, this is going to be a set and forget talent for raiding, simply because when you have 20 people, it just isn't reliable on who it goes on. It's random, so if you're putting it on 4 random people in a 20-man group, that's just not efficient enough. You're going to end up being a very good tank healer by using Beacon of Faith. This is going to allow you to heal everyone in the raid while you are topping the tanks up, which is something that Holy Paladin excels at. And what I said earlier about the Holy Paladin having a different role in Mythic Plus and Raid is based mostly around this talent. Now, for the Legendaries, I am going to be putting up 2 tier lists for the Legendaries, one for raiding and one for Mythic Plus, and I'll tell you why these are so good. Now, obviously Prydaz is straight up broken for pretty much every healer in the game. Now, what this allows you to do is it allows you to cast freely, knowing that you can take a little bit of extra damage whilst keeping that person next to you alive even if they don't have a Prydaz. On top of this, it gives really good stats, and it's just overall very good for raiding and Mythic Plus. Next up is the second best for raiding, the Judgment Ring. Now, like I said before, along with Judgment of Light, you're going to be using your Judgment off cooldown, and 15% extra healing is just straight up broken. And to follow suit in Mythic Plus, the Class Ring is probably going to be our best, namely because it gives us the ability to do more boss DPS and have more spot healing, whereas having the 15% extra healing for 5 seconds might not always be the best in Mythic Plus, simply because people either take lots of damage at once or smaller amounts of damage at once, so this is overall a better rounded legendary for Mythic Plus. Next up, we have special mentions such as the Light of the Martyr Cape which is very good for high mythic plus keys. This allows our spot healing to be a lot better. I've been seeing a Holy Paladin who's been doing the 29 keys. He's been running this and it honestly seems to be doing its job. And in retrospect, you have the Velens, which has its place in mythic raiding as well. Now, the main reason that Velens isn't that good and as good as it used to be is simply because we have two really good trinkets which are already in this spot. So it is very good if you need the burst healing. However, 80% of the time I would say you aren't going to be using this trinket even in raiding. For stat priority, I recommend getting to 50% crit as soon as possible. Now honestly, you can have a piece with some crit and some haste. As long as it has a high amount of crit, it's probably going to be the best piece. Like, crit up to 50% is so heavily weighted, it's not even funny. And then after this, we are going to be going for intellect, followed by mastery, versatility, and then haste. Now, like I said, until you get to about 965, 970, you are probably going to always be taking the piece that has the highest amount of crit, while being able to keep your tier 21 force set, as well as your legendaries that you want. Now onto our ability priority. Now what I mean by this is it isn't as simple as just being a DPS or a tank. You just don't have a set rotation that you go for all the time. Whereas what you more have as a Holy Paladin is the ability to heal your raid for large amounts of AoE, or you can do your spot healing. Now, knowing when to use both of these is what's going to make you a great healer. Not just a healer with really good logs, but if you know who to spot heal and what times to dish out some big AoE healing, this is what I think mastery of the class really is. For our single target healing, we're going to make sure that we are using our Holy Shock on cooldown and then spamming our Flash of Light onto the player if they look like they're about to die. If they don't look like they're taking that much damage, you can always go with some Holy Lights and make sure that you're saving a bit of mana. And of course, if they have a few seconds that they need to be healed up in, you can make sure that you put your Bestow Faith on them if you do have that talent. Now, obviously, it is our job as a Holy Paladin, if we see someone very low, to just click on them. So if your whole raid is about 80%, and you see someone on, say, 20% who's maybe got hit by a Wake of Flame or something on Agrimar, don't heal the raid, heal him. That is your job. You got to make sure that you're healing the low people and saving them from death, because a well-timed Holy Shock will make you very well thanked in your raid group. As for our raid healing, we're going to be making sure that we are keeping our Light of Dawn on cooldown when we are doing this raid healing, as well as our Judgment if we do have the Judgment of Light talent. If you know there's going to be a lot of trickle damage, make sure you're using your Tears Deliverance at these times. Next up, I'm going to be talking about Aura Mastery. Now, obviously in Mythic Plus, if you're running Devotion Aura, this is going to be your very big raid cooldown that makes sure that you keep people alive and give them the 20% DR. For example, if you're doing a fight like Dresseron and people are just taking a lot of damage from the knockback and you don't have your cooldowns, maybe Devotion Aura will give them a fighting chance to live until you can top them up with your Beacon of Virtue. Now, as for raiding, of course we are using our Aura of Sacrifice, which makes our Aura Mastery extremely powerful when it comes to topping up the raid. You want to make sure that you are tying this together with all of your other cooldowns that I've mentioned in this video, and this is going to mean that for 8 seconds you're basically a god. And if people die in this 8 seconds without getting one shot, you're just not clicking your abilities hard enough. For my add-ons, you can see in the middle of the screen that I've got some raid frames up that I can heal off. And off to the side, I have some pretty scuffed LVI bars that I'm using for the meantime until I make myself a more optimized mana bar when I'm not so lazy. Now, for new healers, I recommend that you do have some sort of a mouse over add-on or macro to make sure that you can get the heals out to the right people nice and quickly. Now, you can see as well that this can also tell me where I can dispel people, where I can decurse, where I can heal the most. Currently, I'm using one called Voodoo. I know people who just set up their own, but to each their own. As for our macros, which are going to be pretty important for the next 3 months, I just wanted to show you guys what sort of macros I've been doing. Now, obviously, these are just making sure that we can maximize our healing in a set amount of time, and we don't waste any time pressing 3 buttons. You don't want to be using 4 things at once, like clicking them one after another. You need to press them all at once, and then you need to holy shock someone. That's how Aura Mastery works. You just need to just top them up straight away. Now, having these macros, while you can use them, is very much recommended, and just make sure that you're looking at the timing of these and you're not wasting any ability cooldowns. Maybe you can have some macros that interchange some of these and leave some out, but it's all user preference. Now, that just about wraps up my guide for the Holy Paladin. Now, obviously, this has been so much fun for the last couple of months. I've been really excited to make this guide. I've been really excited to play a new role, a new spec altogether, and I can just let you guys know, if you guys only tank or DPS or something, you should really try out the Holy Paladin. Like, it is fantastic. Like, getting much better and more proficient at a spec without ever playing healing before, I'm so proud of myself. Like, I just love playing it, and if someone invites me to a key group, I'm most likely going to say, oh, can I play on my 960 Paladin? They might think I'm crazy at first, but then they'll probably invite me back another time. Thanks for watching, guys, and remember to stay tuned for my BFA videos. I'm going to be making so many videos, so many guides, so many weak auras over the next couple of months. You guys, if you need any help, come to me first, because I'll have everything covered. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll catch you later.